let's talk about HR round, where a candidate needs to understand the etiquettes which they need to follow during that particular round. Now, when it comes to the HR round, the company will be always focusing on the requirements of the particular role code. So, the candidate needs to frame the answer in such a manner that the person who is taking the interview is being convinced. Now, there are certain guidelines which we need to follow. Let's say the body language. Now, when we are seated, we should make sure the posture is correct and we are not using our hand gestures as we are feeling way too nervous. So, relax and compose your posture. Have a smile on your face as if you mean it. It should look natural. And when the questions are being asked, acknowledge. If not, respond. It should not look as if the HR is asking questions and you are ready to answer them as a robot. Then, the grooming matters a lot. Now, when it comes to grooming, we have different rules for the boys and the girls. Now, when it comes to the girls, please make sure your hairstyle is done in a neat manner. It should not look messy. I will suggest instead of leaving your hair open, how about a ponytail? Then keep your makeup to the minimum and make sure there are less usage of jewelry. The girls can definitely wear a sari provided there is no fancy blouse cuts. And they can definitely wear a salwar kameez and with a dupatta which is pinned properly so that during the interview they are not managing their dress or they're feeling uncomfortable. They can also wear a trouser but a formal business top. At the same time, the clothes should not be tight fitted that when they're seated they feel uncomfortable or it's transparent. Next, when it comes to the boys, now the boys we know they have to be always in the formal dress. A shirt which is neatly ironed and a matching trouser with a matching belt and a matching shoes always look good on them. And in case if the person has beard or mustache, that needs to be trimmed and groomed properly. Goes with the hairstyle as well. Next, what to keep in mind during the interviews when it comes to grooming. Here we need to make sure that both the boy and girl are not using strong perfumes because it might be too much for a person to handle so many different perfumes in one single day. At the same time, coming to the shoes for the girls, make sure the height of the heels is maximum of 2 inches because whenever we have a high heel, there is a tendency at times it makes unnecessary sound, which creates a distraction. And the boys, when you are wearing the shoes, make sure they are neatly polished. Next, when you're seated, the posture should be correct and you need to sound natural. Even if you don't like the answer, make sure you are always acknowledging it with a smile because you need to highlight your positivity throughout the interview. In case of the things doesn't go well as per you or the requirement you are looking for, don't feel disappointed. There is always another company waiting for you. Now let's discuss the questions which are generally asked during an HR interview. Now the first basic question you can always expect the HR is going to ask you your name. Now, when you're answering this question, make sure you say your full name. Because if you say your half name in portions, it says that either you are not confident or you're feeling way too nervous. The second question can be asked, tell me about yourself or describe yourself as a person. Now, the moment you get this question, understand it's a win-win situation for you. Because this question is asked where you have the opportunity to describe yourself. So be happy about it. Always answer your question with a smile. Tell about your recent education, then a little bit about your family, and of course, telling about your interests and passions. But make sure when you're describing these things, you never forget to highlight your strengths. Because end of the conversation, the HR's focus will be always towards the candidate's stability and the strengths. When the HR asks you whether you're okay to work during night shifts and weekends, now this question is being asked to check whether the candidate is ready to be flexible with respect to time. So make sure you are framing your answers as per the company's expectation for that particular role code. Same thing applies for relocation or traveling as well. Never be excited, but make sure you are saying this with a smile. Now, when the HR asks you to describe yourself, how a friend will look at you, or they will have to describe you. Now, this question is asked to see how are your interpersonal skills with respect to different people. So make sure you're again highlighting your strengths here. At the same time, sound natural. The next question, in case if the HR asks you, are you planning for higher studies? Now understand, this question is being asked to check whether you are going to stay in the company for a longer duration or for a shorter term. Now, the moment you are saying that you are planning for higher studies, then the HR will have a mindset that you will be leaving the firm in a short span of time. That means we cannot rely on you for a longer duration. Coming to the question, when the HR wants to know how do you manage your stress. Now, this is a tricky question because here the HR is focusing on how you handle your emotions with respect to time, with respect to people, or different scenarios. So, again, here you can give an example and then highlight your strengths. But make sure whenever you're talking about it, you don't feel stressed out. Well, when the HR wants to know what are your weaknesses as a person. Now we know every person will have some kind of strengths and weakness. So when you're describing or you're telling them about your weakness, keep in mind that you don't make it sound permanent and that you are working towards a solution to overcome that in the long run. Similarly, when it comes to strengths, make sure it doesn't sound overconfident. Now, when the company wants to know the reason why they should hire you, understand every company has certain requirements for certain role codes. So we need to frame our answer in such a manner that those strengths are being highlighted. At the same time, you need to make sure you have relevant examples to make sure these sounds correct or it sounds true. Now, when the HR gives you situations or they ask you to choose between one. Now, for example, if they say, which is better for you? Is it smart work or hard work? Now, make sure when you're answering this, you are supporting the answers in a well-balanced manner. Because whatever the answer you are going to give, more than what you give or what you say, the HR is going to focus on how are you saying that. When it comes to the question, where do you see yourself after 5 years or 10 years or in the future? Now, this question is being framed to see if the candidate has some kind of goals in their career. So, in this question, you can always focus on your short-term goals with respect to your career, with respect to your personal life, or your dreams and achievements. But make sure here as well you are highlighting your strengths as always required. When the question is being asked, how long are you planning to work with us? Now we know as a person, we do not have an exact answer. But here, the HR wants to know that can they rely on you for the longer term? Because they will be planning their future with you in the long run. So do they have an option or do they have to think of an alternate? When it comes to the salary question, now the HR should make sure they understand that you are not a person who is going to be very needy or very greedy. Because the moment they are able to understand and they're able to predict that you are a person among one of them, that means you will be leaving them very soon. So whenever it comes to the salary question, ask for the salary as if you deserve it. Now, the question when they ask you in the end, do you have any questions? Now, this is a question and this is a scenario and an option for you to know what will be your future in that company for the coming next years. So make sure you're always focusing on your career growth in that company. Make sure you're not asking them that what will be your salary or how soon you're going to join, because this may feel the HR that you are overconfident or you are a money-minded person. Now let's say HR has given you a scenario and they ask you that in case if you're rejected in the interview today, so what will be your reaction? Now, whenever you're coming a scenario-based question, first understand, then try and frame your answer and then respond. Because in this scenario, the HR has not said that you are rejected. So it's a scenario where you need to assume that in case you're rejected, so what will be your next step? So when the question is being asked, they want to know, are you a person who's going to give up very easily or you're not okay with failure? So make sure you frame your answers highlighting your strengths again. Now let's say they give a scenario where they're asking you to deal with your anger issues. In case if you work with a coworker who is not at all listening to you. Now this question is being asked to see, are you a team player? And are you a person who is having positive attitude and is ready to overcome their emotions? Now, let's see the question which says, in case if you have to work in a project or an assignment without any guidance. Now here the HR wants to focus and see that are you a person who can take a decision or who can take a initiative for different requirements. Because in the long run, this will be the basic criteria in a candidate the HR will always focus on.